All right, this is Crow Song by Margaret Atwood from 1974. Let's go through our first step, which is, before I read, what do we think it will be about? So there's some cues that we can use here, especially the title and the context of the author, Margaret Atwood. So Crow and Song, she uses song in some of her other titles as well, and it often refers to a message that the speaker of the poem, or the narrator, use the word speaker when we're talking about poetry, has a message to give to the audience. And crows are a symbol often associated with death, or the plague, or dark forces. And so she's immediately set up this idea of a dark force here. So I'm anticipating this poem to have a dark or an evil undercurrent mood to it, and possibly a message connected with that. Any relevant context we should know? Well, in 1974, the world is in the midst of the Cold War. We've had the Vietnam conflict raging on for at least 10 years with American involvement, and then before that with French involvement. We've had the Korean conflict. We've got a lot of instability in South America. We've got Europe split in half with the Iron Curtain, and we've got a large nuclear threat looming between the United States and the Soviet Union. And so this was a fairly dark time in human history, and at times there wasn't a lot of hope because of that threat of nuclear war. It was a very real threat that humanity would destroy itself with these nuclear weapons, and because of the Cold War. So that's some important context that we have here. What's the genre? It's a poem, and it's free verse poem, and so we can expect that the poem might not have a clear structure to it as compared to something like a sonnet or a haiku. It's going to develop its own rules here, or maybe break a bunch of rules as well. Purpose, because going back to the title, because the title the word has song in it, so it's going to involve, I suspect, some message and some emotional engagement, because a song involves lyrics, and lyrics are all about emotional engagement. And what connections can you make to other texts you have read? Well, we've got a body of work with Margaret Atwood's poetry. She often deals with ideas of death. Also, another text she's really well known for is Handmaid's Tale, and that's also dystopian future. And so we've got this dystopian, broken society connections that we can make with her other works. All right, let's take a look at the poem. Let's do our first reading. And remember, when we're looking at our first reading, we're now in step 2. We're thinking, okay, what is it about? What do I think the purpose is? Who's the audience? What words and phrases stand out? And can we identify any of these things here? So let's take a read through. Crow Song. In the arid sun over the field, where the corn has rotted and then dried up, you flock and squabble. Not much here for you, my people, but there would be if. In my austere black uniform I raised the banner which decreed hope, and which did not succeed, and which is not allowed. Now I must confront the angel who says win, who tells me to wave any banner that you will follow. For you ignore me, my baffled people. You have been through too many theories, too many stray bullets. Your eyes are gravel, skeptical. In this hard field you pay attention only to the rhetoric of seed, fruit, stomach, elbow. You have too many leaders, you have too many wars. all of them pompous and small. You resist only when you feel like dressing up. You forget the sane corpses. I know you would like God to come down and feed you and punish you. That overcoat on sticks is not alive. There are no angels, but the angels of hunger, prehensile and soft as gullets. Watching you, my people, I become cynical. You have defrauded me of hope and left me alone with politics. All right, so a fairly strong ending and a seeming indictment of the politics of the time. So let's take a look at what we need to do. What is it about? Well, we know it's about a crow, so I'm going to suggest that the speaker of the poem is a crow. So who are they speaking to? Speaking to my people. And it switches to second person down here. It's in first person in the first two stanzas and then moves into second person down here as well. And so the audience, or the person, the people the crow is speaking to, could very well be humanity. And it's giving an indictment of the way humanity has conducted itself with war and the pettiness and the ineffectiveness of politics. And this word defrauded seems to connect with politics, how people have been cheated by the politics of the time. Let's take a look. What else have we got here? What do you think the purpose is? Considering that the 1960s, 1970s had very strong civil rights movements, there was a lot of protests going on, it could very well be to inform or persuade people to protest and think more critically about what their governments are doing and the way humanity is, and the direction humanity is headed in. Who is the audience? Given that this is a free verse poem, and because Margaret Atwood is literary and academic, I'm going to suggest that the audience is likely to be university educated, possibly college students or recent graduates from universities. That's often where a lot of protest movements start or ferment. And my guess is probably America or Canada, because Margaret Atwood is from Canada. She's Canadian. So that's my best guess on audience at this stage. What words and phrases stand out? So let's head back. Words like rotted, squabble, they stand out and really make this feel like a dysfunctional society that the crow is overseeing. My people stands out a lot as well. It appears that the crow is overseeing humanity. Hope definitely stands out. There's a lot of most of the words in here have negative connotations, and so hope really stands out because it's really contrasted against the mood of the poem. Angel is interesting here as well, and it's repeated in the poem as well, which makes me feel like maybe angel, this is not a good angel, maybe it's something such as the angel of death. Here's this word, my baffled people, comes up here. And sane corpses is interesting. There's an interesting oxymoron here. And angels comes up here. And this last line, this is the first, well, it's not really the first mention of politics when there's leaders earlier, but it really focuses us now. Yeah, and left me alone with politics. It's a real indictment of how the crow feels disgust at the politics of the time. And so that leads us to trying to identify message, themes, tone and mood, or any bias. So the message, I think, is that humanity is in a dysfunctional state. there's nothing really positive here, and the mood is very dark and aggressive. Well, maybe not aggressive, but it's certainly a melancholic mood, and the tone seems disappointed with the audience. Going back here, themes. We have themes of politics and leadership. We have themes of poverty and dysfunction, rebellion, possibly, death and war, and accusation as well. Bias. It's definitely bias against the leaders of the time. There's nothing positive there, especially with that last line. It's a direct attack. All right, let's move on to step 3. Let's focus on the details. Can you identify stylistic devices and structure? All right, let's take a look. Now, Margaret Atwood's poetry is a little bit difficult in this sense because it's free verse. Structure can be a little bit difficult, and I think one of the best ways to think about structure is what happens and when does it happen. And so we've got our opening here in the arid sun over the field where the corn has rotted and then dried up. So she's immediately establishing a visual image that's quite barren, almost like a desert or something that used to be productive. The corn has rotted. But not only has the crop failed, but it's rotted. So that means that the crop was unattended, that the people who were looking after the crop, something's happened to them, or that dysfunction has come into play. And so right away in this opening, the mood is set, a disastrous mood, an unsettling mood is set. So in the second stanza now we get a better picture of who the speaker is. My austere black uniform, so that's the crow. I raise the banner of hope. And so now we're getting the actions of the crow because we want to set up, the author wants to set up the failing of humans. For you ignore me, my baffled people. So here's the disappointment section. So now we're moving into disappointment and accusation and almost a diagnosis of what the problem is. And now we come through to the end, and this is the final verdict of the crow. My people, I become cynical, and you have defrauded me of hope and left me alone with politics. Defrauded me of hope and left me alone with politics. So there isn't hope for the future, and this is the conclusion, the crow's conclusion for humanity. And so that's a rough structure of the poem. In terms of stylistic devices, the word choice is really essential here, as is the punctuation. And so word choice, we mentioned arid sun, rotted. There's a lot of words that have negative connotations. Austere is something, an austere black is something that you would wear to a funeral, for example. Even the positive words are put into a negative way. Confront the angel. Confront means, well, we've got to fight. And so maybe this is not a good angel, even though angels are usually positive things. So there's the key words there is the word choice and the connotation of those words. We've also got line length, if. So this is almost wishing here, and a strong use of punctuation and breaking up the lines here. In my austere uniform, I raise the banner. There's these gaps here that really help emphasize the following line. I raise the banner, which decreed hope and which did not succeed. So these short lines really are quite punchy. All right. So why do that? I think it reinforces the message of the poem, which is that the crow, despite its best efforts, now sees a dysfunctional society, a society that is failing and collapsing. The structure of a free verse poem allows the author to do that because the stanzas can be different lengths, the line lengths can be different lengths, and so the structure can be quite discombobulating. All right, let's move on to step 4. New insights. Can you identify something about the text that you didn't see in step 1? And did you change your mind or change your opinion about anything? Yes, I did. I think the main thing that I changed my opinion on is the structure. At first I was thinking, oh, well, maybe structure's not that important to the poem. But now I think actually structure is really essential to the poem because of the level of or the lack of regularity in the structure of the poem really connects to that message of, hey, humanity, you've messed up and you're not building a successful society here. All right, that's the end of our initial read through. And if I were writing an essay, then I might pick up on the importance of structure for communicating the message of the poem and start to build my analysis around that thesis idea. The next step then would be to go on to a deeper analysis, something like the Big Five analysis, or I could center my analysis around a critical literary perspective, such as a feminist perspective or social criticism. All right, that's it for the moment. Thanks for listening in.